Good morning, and I'm back for morning coffee with Brigid after 2 days of not doing morning coffee with Brigid because I had no power. Interestingly, we had in our neighborhood, there was a storm that came through. Now, storms are actually pretty common in the summer, but what's new, really, is that, because I've lived in this house for 21 years now. Is it 21? Yeah, it'll be 21 in August. That I've lived in this house for this long, and yeah, we've had storms. I mean, we've had hurricanes, we've had, there's been massive kind of storms. Although I thought I heard somebody say, when I had to go out yesterday to get food because I didn't have power. In fact, they were saying we weren't going to have power until Sunday at 4. And that, today is Saturday, and I thought, oh, good Lord, okay, I have to, I'm doing the dream analysis class this afternoon. I have appointments this morning. I have stuff I have to finish between now and then. I have clients on Sunday, so I'm like, I really need my power back. And I was talking with the waitress down at the restaurant, because it's a restaurant where I go regularly, and they're very nice there, and I know them. And all of a sudden, a text popped up on my phone saying, confirm, let us know if your power is still out. And I looked at her, I said, oh, maybe. She goes, oh, I hope it's gone back on. So I, paid my check and I went home. And when I got home, it was like, hooray, yes, the power was in fact back on. And I still haven't reset the clocks downstairs. It's interesting because, and again, I'm right now I'm talking to myself, and I know that people might jump on this morning. I did see at least one person who's usually a regular on this live stream. I saw her last night, so she might pop on this morning, but she might not, because I think she's also taking my class today. So yeah, I feel like, because when the power's out, there's, the first day there was no internet at all. I had like one bar. I could not connect to anything. Day 2, it was a little better, so I could at least post something. I could at least post a photo, and I couldn't really import any photos, so I was kind of reusing some, because I couldn't bring anything in, because it was just too much juice to get that on the phone. And because I know people will be in, you'll be sitting in a parking lot somewhere and be able to use your phone, but it wasn't one of those things. And for me, getting out and doing all that driving, it was more driving than I actually wanted to do in that time slot. So yeah, it was just a very, very unsettled couple of days. I had a very, very good Wednesday. Before that, I met with Karenna at Riverside Treasures, and we are going to work on something. It looks like mid-July, like around July 13th, 14th, I will be doing probably a Reiki class. I'll doing a Reiki 1 class there. And I'm also going to be giving a free session on Rahani. Just giving a little presentation, maybe just a quick sample of how it works for people who want it. I mean, some people, maybe not everybody's going to be ready for it, but it would just be, it wouldn't be like an individual session. It would just be kind of like a group Rahani, just really quick for people who are there, just to kind of get a vibe of the energy. And then, so I'm planning on doing that. And then, of course, there would be an opportunity for people to sign up and take it, obviously, and probably at a more discounted rate for in-person, because in-person generally charge more than I would for a online, because even though both take up my time, and both of them are about taking a, you basically what you're really paying for is not so much the healing itself, but rather the time. But I'm trying to balance, okay, what is my time worth versus, okay, what is affordable for people who are in these kinds of transitions or in these spaces where they really need this. So I'm trying to keep a balance between the two. Good morning. It's been, like I said, it's been a rather hairy couple of days, because I usually do these live streams every morning, and now there is it was just all of a sudden Wednesday night. Wednesday was a very good day. I worked with Karenna. I had given her a Rahani treatment, being I'm going to be doing it in her store. I wanted her to see how it was, and she was pretty blown away by it. And it's and the people I've done it for so far have all been absolutely blown away by it. So it's just really remarkable. I haven't, as an energy healer, I haven't worked with anything like that before. So So anyway, so I will be doing some of those events like around July 13, 14 is what we're planning on right now up in Milford, New Jersey. I will also be offering online versions of these as well, where I'll have free information sessions. This afternoon is my dream class. I think there's still time for people who might want to get in on it until about 11 o'clock this morning. I think that's when registration shuts down for that. That's a cheap class. It's only like a $20 class. But it's going to be chock full of information, so if somebody interested in learning about dreams and dream analysis, then that's, definitely, like I said, it's from 2 to 4 this afternoon, and I'm in New York, now in New Jersey, so this is really like New York Eastern Standard Time, depending on where people are coming from. But I do have at least one person from the UK who's going to be on, and so it's like 7 in the evening there. And then I think, everybody else I think is roughly in the East Coast area. So we'll see. So I've got a pretty good group right now, but I could probably take up to, could take a couple more if I needed to. So So anyway, so that's all going on. And I think over the last couple days, when thinking about what kind of topic I wanted to discuss today, of course, I always flip a few cards. I always go through, I have a morning, my new routine is I get up in the morning, I do my Rahani first, because I'm doing a Rahani self-cleanse, as they call it, after I've been attuned. And then I will get up, and if I've had any dreams, I write those down, because that's part of it, part of what I'm going to be actually teaching today about writing your dreams down and remembering dreams and so forth. And I had a really good dream. Well, I had a dream last night that's going to be really good for analyzing in this class. So it's almost like it was like a gift. Like, here, show people this dream, because it actually helps illustrate all the steps that I have to looking at all the elements of a dream and coming together with a single interpretation. So I'll talk about that in the class. But the topics that came up today, there was a couple of things that were on my mind. So one, I flipped 3 cards out of the Osho Zen deck, which I'm going to actually do a reading with at the end of this live stream. But the cards I got were actually 3 majors. We've got the Wheel of Fortune, the Empress, and the Hierophant. And this is the Change card. This is the Empress, is the Creativity card. And the third one is the No Thingness card. Okay, it's interesting that the Hierophant is construed of as being no thing, because the no thingness just has to do with, that card usually comes up in this deck when you're in the gap, like when you are at a point where there could be a crisis of faith, or there could just be some kind of a change where you're not really able to see your way forward. And it's an interesting card to show up because and no thingness also is just about, literally there's no thing to cling on to. There's no goal. There's nothing that you can point to. Certainly within the context of Eastern religion, to talk about no thingness, that's often interpreted very negatively in the West. I think it was Pope John Paul II who had made a comment when he said, I don't know why anybody follows Eastern philosophy. They're so negative with their idea of no thingness. And I'm like, well, then you obviously don't understand what that means if you would say that. Because no thingness basically just says that there's no thing. And when we talk about God, when we talk about, when we talk about what's ultimate, okay, it's what's supreme, you're not talking about a thing. I think a lot of times we often conceive of God as a thing because that's how our minds work. Our minds need images. We work in images, hence dream images and things. But our body talks to us in images. And our mind, our soul, however you want to conceive of the different aspects of us and us energetically and physically. When we talk about, we tend to try to look for truth in terms of its thingness. So science, of course, is a method where you test and you measure things, and you create a hypothesis, and then you devise an experiment that will in theory, either prove or disprove that hypothesis. But of course, any result that you get from an experiment has to be repeatable. But it's based on something material. You can only test something from which you can actually observe the results. So we tend to think about things that have to do with truth, I think, also in terms of material things, something that I can point to, something solid, something I can put my hands on. And when we're talking about things that are, when you're talking about whatever you want to call the concept of God that we use, you're not, even you're not necessarily, we say it's an intelligence, or we say it's this or it's that. We don't actually know that. God is really, when I talk about God, I always talk about the way that is sort of the archetype or figure that we use for negotiating what is unknown. Now, does that mean, could there be a force? And yes, I mean, probably. But is it going to be like an old man sitting in the clouds on a throne? No. I mean, that's an image that the mind comes up with to try to help us connect. Even now that I'm doing Rouhani, that was a question I had gotten the other day about that, because we bring in this, certain angels and so forth doing that. And the person who I was doing it for was not somebody who believed in that. He said, well, that's just your belief system. I said, no, it's not actually my belief system. I've resisted dealing with angelology for years. But this kind of energy comes in, and it's energy that has a couple of things going for it. First of all, angel energy is much older than biblical energy. That's certainly something that that's been indicated to me. And certainly I think history supports that. A lot of what you think of as angelic figures in the Bible actually probably go back to Sumerian and Babylonian figures, other ancient Mesopotamian type intermediary spirits, or even may have been deities in their own right. And that this was sort of shifted around and changed. And if you read the Old Testament carefully, you can see how their role changes. How rather than being part of these councils that are connected to what we think of now as Yahweh or Jehovah, Jehovah kind of becomes the main guy, and they all kind of become the ones who fall in line behind him. And that's at least according to the angel things that I have gotten, because people know I do channeling of Archangel Azrael. He said, no, that's not quite how it works. But nonetheless, it's the idea that you have we have these certain concrete ideas from religion, from philosophy about what God is like. And I think it was both. I think both Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung have both said at different times. I don't believe in God. I know. And but Jung also very famously said, and again, I'm probably slightly paraphrasing this, something to the effect of your last barrier, your religion is your last barrier to a religious experience. Because ultimately, when we're talking about what's the ultimate reality, shall we call it, or whatever we're in, whatever this great mystery is, it's a mystery. Your mind tries to find ways to kind of, and usually minds can only talk in metaphors. Well, it's like this or it's like that. You can't actually say what it is. And that's the whole point of no-thingness. It's not a thing. Okay? It's a long way around of saying that, right? But that's what it is. It's this no-thingness. And so whatever the concept is, I mean, and this is to say, I think another way to put it is the way my guru had put it once, was she said, when you worship a deity, and now of course within the context of Hinduism, you have hundreds of gods, right? There's I think they said, somebody claimed that they had 300 million gods or something like that. It was a phrase I used to hear a lot when I took religious studies ages ago. People in the West go, well, how can you have so many gods? Because we think of God as something single and ultimate, because we come from a Western monotheistic idea about God. And to them, they're like, well, no, I mean, there's reality, but these are all these different aspects, and the gods are these aspects that you can they can help you, in certain aspects of your life. The things that you can tune into. Oftentimes in Hinduism, you'll have an Ishta Devata, which is a chosen deity that you would want to emulate. And I think I've talked about this before. Like some Hindus have like Hanuman, for example, seems to be a very popular one. The monkey god that we see, who's usually a companion of Lord Rama in the Hindu epics. And Hanuman, is often considered to have qualities of devotion and loyalty and steadfastness and things like that. So people who do daily puja or worship or make an offering to Hanuman or are looking to develop those qualities in themselves. Okay, so it's not conceived of in the same way, and it's not simply to say that the gods are just all psychological qualities, but that said, our psyches are very much tied up in with the big picture. That's something we always tend to think of them as two separate things, like, oh, the thoughts in my head are different from everything going on outside. And this is kind of saying, well, no, it's not quite like that. And so it's interesting here, I find, just in the context of looking at this storm analogy again, because like I said, I had a couple days with, where I wake up in the morning, I couldn't even make my coffee. I had my former job, I remember our boss used to give us, like, at Christmas time, she'd give us, like, Starbucks cards. And I never had any Starbucks near me. I mean, I'm not big on going out for coffee. I mean, sometimes I will with friends and stuff, but I'm not like a big like, oh, I have to go to DD in the morning or I have to go to Starbucks or whatever. But being I could not make my own coffee, I found these cards, and so I added them on. I was able to add them on the Starbucks app when I managed to get some internet. I added them on, and hot tip: if you end up with more than one card, you have to kind of transfer them all to one card, otherwise it doesn't read it. So, in any case, I was able to get breakfast just on Starbucks points because we now have one like just 2 miles up the road. They added one when they added these new condos in up the road a little bit. So I was able to do that. So I was like, okay, well that works. And then I know my sister was very kind enough to host me for lunch one day. I went up there and was able to charge my phone and get internet and stuff like that. So but the thing is, when you kind of get thrown into that kind of space, the idea is that, like how we always think about change. When we ever see the change card, we always think, okay, well, this is going to be a good thing, especially if we feel like we've been stagnant, like we're not really going anywhere. If we don't know where we're going, we feel that kind of stagnation. But sometimes the change can be an actual upheaval. It can be more like a tower type change. And I always feel like that literally, because you have the thunderbolt that comes in and just wipes everything out. And, what I think I was saying towards the beginning of the live stream was that, this was not a problem. I've lived here for 21 years now. This has not been a problem until now. 2 storms now where I've lost power for more than one day. And apparently it's because they don't keep any crews in the state. They have like maybe a handful of people, and they have to wait for people to come in from other states. Because I'm seeing like Ohio and different places, which are quite far away. And to drive from Ohio to here, that's like a 16-hour drive. That's a long drive back to New Jersey. So it's just... And then the crews, of course, probably have to rest after that, and they have to come in. So it can be 2 or 3 days before your electric's back. And I'm like, well, that's not a viable model. And it also suggests that the infrastructure may not be good. That there may be wires and things that held up before are not holding up now. So they really need to do something different. But when you're kind of thrown into that, it was great. I had this wonderful Wednesday. I had readings I did that day. I had like I said, I went to did some Rahani just as a sample thing for Corinna so that she knew what it was about. And then I got, when we were making arrangements about classes next month and stuff. And then I came home, and then after that it was like, boom, like all of a sudden I was watching a video and then internet went out. Then first it flashed in and out, and then the power went out completely. And I'm not even sure where the problem. I thought it was a line at the end of the street, but it doesn't seem like that was the case. So yeah, it was just... it was kind of a crazy thing. And the card that I kept pulling, I pulled this one out too, even though it didn't come up this morning, was this one. It's the Adventure card. This is actually the Page of Pentacles. And as you can see, this is a little child, because pages generally represent either children or very young people, just kind of looking into this like rainbow space. It's almost like a little portal into some other dimension or something, and that it's an adventure. And that was the card I kept getting. It's like, yes, but you don't have to do your regular thing. It's an adventure. And I'm like, yes, but I have a business to run and I have mortgage to pay at the beginning of the month. So I need to like keep working. But they're all just like, nah, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. So, So anyway, it's, but the idea was interesting there because, I've talked about, I know in other live streams I brought this up. The idea that when you are in a space where you are trying to, where things are kind of out of sorts, where chaos comes in, okay, or you get that thunderbolt that comes in and messes up what your plans are. You're trying to get somewhere, but, there's an accident and they close the road that you need to get to where you're going. And, the detour is going to take you, and then maybe you're going to miss the opportunity or the thing. We all have things that happen that are unexpected. The job somebody plans to stay in for, I'm planning to stay X number of years and then retire, and this is what my pension's going to be and so forth. I remember that happened to somebody when COVID hit. There was somebody who had done all their financial planning around their investments and things like that, and just said, oh, okay, I'm going to have X number of dollars if I stay here X number of years, and da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, when COVID hit, the university we worked for said, we're not making the same contributions to your retirement. So this person went from getting, like, I think, I mean, I think you had to be there a certain amount of time. You got like 12%. They actually were pretty good at matching. But he was still fairly new, so he was like at 5%, and they dropped him to 1%. And he is like, well, my plan's just gotten all screwed up now. And so that meant, and I think they may have restored it to the previous points. I don't work there anymore, but it's just like you get these things that come in and you go, oh my God, like, you just have this stuff that it suddenly comes in. And it's not what you expected. It comes in and then you don't know quite what to do with it. So, I mean, I think that we have, between the creativity card here and the adventure card, which are actually, quite similar in color too. I mean, of course, they've got a lot of rainbow colors in them. But there's the idea, the rainbow imagery on here. Rainbows is actually the suit of pentacles here. So this has to do with your security and with your abundance when you see that. It might give us, refer us back to the idea of the leprechaun who has the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It might be more of that kind of a reference. But the idea is that now you're able to see life in all of its color. You're able to see things fully and perhaps joyfully as well. So the idea is, so really the message that's been coming in over the last few days is like, yes, but things are different now. And yes, there's certain things you can't do. But now this is a time to be creative. This is a time to do new things. This is a time to treat this as an adventure. Okay, so maybe you can't sit and do your work this morning. Maybe you should go out for a long walk somewhere because it's a beautiful day and you should just be in the moment and stop worrying about this and this. Trying to treat it as an adventure. And I think that can be a really, really difficult thing to do. Especially if you're facing certain other limitations where you kind of go, okay, but there's still certain things I need to do. There's still certain people I need to communicate with. There's still certain things. And so I feel like there was a strong, but the impulse seemed to be towards that thing I had talked about a while ago about being able to be centered in yourself wherever you are. Meditation and things like that are easy when everything's going your way. It's very easy to be quote unquote spiritual when everything's going your way. When everything kind of falls into place. And we almost feel like that's a validation of the path that we're on, right? That, everything's going along, I did this, and now click, 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 everything's going into place. There you go, this shows I'm on the right path. And probably to a certain degree that's true. But then sometimes when things come in, what we do is we tend to interpret them very negatively. We say, oh, well, then that means I'm on the wrong path and that I'm not going to be able to do this. And that, And the reality is that the broader reality is that things don't always go according to the way we think they should go. When we're seeing a whole lot here about yielding control, another card that comes up a lot lately for people is the Eight of Cups. The idea of, let go of your old way of thinking about, familiar way about thinking about how things are supposed to be. Because I do feel like we are moving into a big change. I had gotten when I was doing some channeling, I had gotten some message that this past Thursday was supposed to be something fairly significant about that day. And I'm not sure. I don't know whether that's globally. I don't know whether I don't think it was not just individually, but there was some kind of a shift that occurred on Thursday. I don't know exactly what the details of that are yet. I mean, maybe I'll see more about that as I go on. But it does seem, the only thing I could really get about it was the idea that this has to do with, we have a huge shift of masculine, feminine energies that are going on globally. Because obviously we have definitely been more, our whole worldview, way of gaining truth, things like that, and way of just being in the world, okay? Even communicating in the world has been very masculine. It's more about action. It's about doing things. It's about rationality, reasonableness, sensibleness, which again are all not bad things, but they are often to the exclusion of other things, like, intuition, allowing your emotions to come through, having an open heart to people. A lot of people don't have an open heart. I mean, because they're just like, you've been wounded by people too many times. And so you kind of pull in. So there seems to be a lot of disruption. And of course, if people know my work for years, is I work a lot with the feminine. I talk about working with the dark feminine because I said you want to work with those forces of that we think of as forces of fury and betrayal. But what they're there to do is like how do they get you to the point of being able to open up, and really, in a way, to kind of get back to this energy again of kind of being a child who is curious and who looks at life with fresh eyes. We have a hard time doing that because oftentimes we have so much baggage from all the things people have done to us over the years. And so how do you let go of that? And I feel like that's where this feminine energy is coming in. It's not just about the feminine, like I said, is very complex. I mean, yes, there's kind of a mothering, nurturing aspect. You can have that in Rouhani. They call that the Mary aspect, the Mother Mary aspect. But there are other aspects as well. There's both, there's also, there's Mother Kali, there's Mary Magdalene, we have Olympian ideals like Athena and Artemis. There's different facets of femininity that are very complicated. I talk a little bit about these. I have a book called Death and the Maiden, and I talk a little bit about them in that book that I wrote back in 2019. Algora Publishing put it out. But it's an academic book entirely. But it does delve a little bit more deeply into some of these feminine mythical archetypes that we're familiar with in Western culture, and how they're not just simply one thing. So, for example, Hera in Greek mythology, who's the queen of the gods, and she's about marriage and civilized relationships and proper social things. But Hera can be quite nasty. She can, if she doesn't if her husband cheats on her, she will go after the woman and the child to a degree that just actually seems cruel. And when she does not like a particular warrior or hero, she will go after them. Somebody actually wrote an article about her as Hera or Juno as being the wrath of Satan. There's a way that she can go after people. But yet she's this, if you think about what the archetype is of the wife and the mother, she, she kind of, it's much more complicated than just what the apparent symbol is. And so the feminine is something very complex, but it's something that we have kind of devalued. So to be more feminine, if people say to me, "Oh, you're being girly, you're being weak," right? It's not about weakness. I actually posted a card here that said, that it was the idea that when you're vulnerable, you're actually at your strongest point, and that's the thing that's hard for people. They think, "No, I can't be vulnerable. I have to stand firm, and I have to be," and sometimes when you stand firm in a storm, you just get blown over. Whereas if you allow yourself to go with it, it's an old thing, the oak tree versus the willow tree. The one that bends will survive the storm, as opposed to the one who has to rigidly stand firm doesn't, So, speaking of, we're getting to 7 o'clock, so let's do our reading for today. So, what do viewers, and what do those who may watch this afterwards today, what do we need to know? Okay, interesting, in light of what I was just talking about. Okay, so our first card here is the Knight of Swords, which is the fighting card. Okay, so yeah, with this kind of energy, this Knight of Swords energy, Knight of Swords or Knight of Clouds in this deck is basically, first of all, it can be a very critical energy, and it can also be one that just kind of rushes in. It's the idea that we have that knee-jerk reaction, like, this thing happened, I'm going to do this thing right away. It's that kind of energy. And oftentimes it can be that knee-jerk kind of resistance that we have. Something comes up, it's not the way we want it to be, and maybe certain things are occurring because they're trying to make us think about something differently or move in a new direction. This is the fighting, this is the resistance that says, no, this is what I said it has to be, and it has to be this. Okay? So this kind of a card just has to do with the ways in which we may fight with other, and again, because the fighting element of this, the fact that this knight is covered in armor like this, and you see the two people arguing over here in the clouds, is because you're putting that armor on because you're on the defensive, you're worried about being wounded, and you're looking around, prepared for the next fight, prepared for the next thing. And of course, this is coming from, we have this place of suppression, the Ten of Wands. And as you can see, this person is just like completely, it's like there's like all of this energy of like somebody who's like just completely tied up in their own, an energy that needs to be released safely. But the fact that the 10 of Wands energy means we've carried this for so long that it's nearly explosive. You know, it's something that we keep inside of ourselves, and we're fighting not to have the explosion. But what we really actually need is a safe way to have this explosion, to release this burden. Okay, it goes back to what I said about opening up the heart. That's often a thing that once you start opening it, it's like just stuff is working through you, and it's coming out and it's coming out. And you're going to go through phases kind of back and forth. Like, again, I'm finding this doing the Rahani healing. It's when you really start getting into the wounds, it's like you can have days where you just feel kind of like, you know, because that energy is trying to find a way to transmute and express itself. And if it's very, very intense energy, it can be a very, very intense kind of shift that goes on. But yeah, there's this idea of releasing the suppressed energy and the external feeling of which we are aware. Okay, turning in. So again, the woman in meditation here, all these different voices yelling around her, and she looks very serene. And yeah, this is the Four of Cups card, which is usually the card of dissatisfaction, or only focusing on the negative, not seeing what opportunities are being handed out to you. But in this deck, it's focused more on the idea that you don't want to let the voices of other people come in, and sometimes they're voices within ourselves too. We all have like an inner, some aspect of the soul that's like an inner saboteur. It's one that comes in and is the one that when you lay awake at night, just going like, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? It's that kind of a voice. And that voice can leave us uneasy. A lot of times we think we do try to suppress that voice. Like we think we're going to deal with it by fighting with it. But, you know, what it is more that we have to really, you know, get centered. We have to separate our thoughts and feelings from that of people around us, and say, well, what is it that I want? Not what does my family want, or what do my friends want, or what do I think people are going to like me for? You know, we don't want to fall into those. Those are the traps that we frequently fall into because we don't want to be isolated. We want that level of social acceptance. We want to be accepted by our family, by our friends, by different people. You know. But at some point, you have to figure out to what degree are you suppressing who you are because other people are telling you the way it's supposed to be. And you're never going to satisfy everybody. You know, some people will appreciate you and like what you're doing. Other people won't understand it and might be critical. But that's the way the game is played. You know, and when you're playing a game, there's always going to be people who are going to be with different agendas and acting at different purposes, and not necessarily because they're being evil or nefarious or anything like that, but just because this is the way life is. Not everybody. You may have people. So, for example, within a family situation, you may have somebody who says, "Oh, I'm doing this, or I want you to do this because I care about you and I care about this with you." But really, it may be more about them and feeling, you know, for whatever reason, that you're doing something that to them feels uncomfortable. And there's a projection that goes on. Oh, you've quit your job without another job. Well, I mean, you know, you can't do that. I mean, you really do have to go out and get something. Because to them, the idea of doing that may be so unsettling that they can't look at you doing something like that. It almost, because they're almost like mirroring, saying, well, that's not something I would do. Well, maybe it is something you need to do, you know? And I'm not saying that people have to do that. That's just an example. But our advice card here is the Stars card, or the Star, which is called Silence in this deck. And as you can see, you can kind of see the face over here. And again, it has sort of that element of the nothingness card, only this is saying there's nothing to do but be in the silence of where you are right now. So if we look at all this energy that we have here, we have this this fighting, this suppression. We see all of these other voices, this fighting, all of this energy that is just very frenetic, that is traumatizing almost. And silence is just saying, you just need to be where you are right now. You need to be in the stillness of where you are right now. So, yeah. And really the Star card is also, it's often a card of hope and possibility. Again, we talked about the child, the idea of being able to look at new possibilities, being in the silence of where you are, not letting all those other voices affect you. And of course, meditation is part of what achieves that as well. The idea that we can, even if it's just for a few minutes, that we can get quiet enough to just hear our own inner voice. And rather than, what are really actually the voices of all these sort of contrary and judging kind of energies that we have. So with the silence card, and it's also about vulnerability, about having an open heart, and about healing and allowing ourselves to heal wounds. And the outcome card we have is the Knight of Pentacles, which is a little turtle. It's just a slowing down card. Okay? And again, we have more of this. He's moving into this rainbow energy, but he's moving in very, very slowly. So it's the idea of, we have all this energy that says, all these things that we have to do, and you have to do it right now. And this is just saying, just be where you are, slow down, take your time. There's no need to rush. You will get there when you need to get there. And that's just something that we have, I think, a little bit of a hard time. When something unsettles us, we want to settle it as quickly as possible. And I'm certainly, it's funny, I'm standing here saying this to you, and I'm like, I'm probably the most guilty person when it comes to that, because I'm just like, I don't like, I like to be able to sit in a space of tranquility and say, okay, I know that, I'm covered and I have a plan B and whatever for whatever's going on. To sit in a space where I don't have that, and I just have to kind of be like, okay, doesn't sit well with me. But nonetheless, there is definitely this idea of, how you're going to bring those energies into balance, how you're going to keep out the voices that don't need to have an opinion. Maybe we'll have an opinion regardless, but you don't necessarily need the opinion of some of these other voices. And just figure out who you are, where you are, and what you need to heal and where you need to go. Because the wounds of the past, we often put defenses up and we can feel safe inside those defenses, but they also take away from us because we don't feel, because now we've compromised our own life and our own happiness because of something somebody else did. So by releasing that kind of energy, then we actually reclaim our own happiness. Which is something I'm finding. And I pulled a Gateway Oracle card, and the card we got is Following Your Bliss. Speaking of Joseph Campbell. And, good morning, Suda. And, if you missed my note message yesterday, yes, I'm back. Obviously my power is back, and I'm an extremely happy camper about that. Following Your Bliss. I'm just going to tell you what it says from the book. If you don't follow your bliss now, when will you? If you've been waiting to act until circumstances are different or somehow better, you may have a long wait. Some people put off following their North Star until they graduate, get married, have kids, retire. If you continue to do so, you may never attain genuine happiness. Take steps today to experience the sweet nectar of life. So, yes, good morning. So glad your power is back. Yes. Oh, so am I. It was just a weird couple of days. And you always never know quite how long, because first they say, oh, it's going to be 7 o'clock tonight. And you think, all right, well, this is how I'll plan my day. And, and then all of a sudden they go, oh, well, actually, it's going to be 7 o'clock tomorrow night. And then you're like, okay. And so then you have to rearrange again. And then originally they said, oh, you'll be back by Sunday at 4. I'm like, what? What do you mean Sunday at 4? But fortunately, I had gone out, and all of a sudden I got this notification, verify, let us know if your power is still out. And I went, ooh, I'm going to go home and see. And of course I had power. So, so I'm a very happy camper, but I'm like everything I have to catch up on. And, so I have the dream class this afternoon. Anybody who still wants to register for that, transitionlifecoaching.net. If you go to my link in my bio, it's actually I think it's the top one on the link in my bio. If anybody still wants to register for that up until 11 o'clock this morning. I finished the actual presentation for that. I've just got to finish the handouts that I'm going to give to people. But yeah, that's a good thing. And I'm just glad to be back on here doing these morning live streams. It's just, it's a lot of, I enjoy doing it. I feel like that's kind of my connection when I'm out for a gig when I don't get out of the house a lot. But, but there's a lot of new stuff that's come up over the last few days, and I know today's going to be busy, and I've got clients today and tomorrow, so I'm kind of trying to keep everything together. But following your bliss, and it goes along with everything that I saw. Like the card I had been talking about earlier, if you missed it, which I don't know if I have it on top here anymore, but there was the adventure card, and the idea of the adventure is that yeah, every day should just be an adventure. So, okay, so your power's out. Okay, so do something else today. Like, don't worry about, you know, whether or not, about all this other stuff. Just let it go and just go do it, you know? And that's the hardest thing to do. I don't, we're so programmed to not do that. But following your bliss is saying, yeah, you've got to look for it every day. You can't wait until all the circumstances are perfect. And I think I did actually talk about this earlier this week, or maybe last week. But yeah, I kind of talked about this idea that there is that yeah, you have to, your happiness has to be now regardless of what else is going on around you. Kind of like with meditation, the ideal place to meditate is where everything is chaotic, because if you can learn to be quiet and tranquil in yourself in that space, then you can be quiet and tranquil in any space, you know. I mean, it's really nice when it's nice and quiet and it's easy, but as I said at the beginning, but it's not as easy when things get thrown into chaos. So I don't know. Sometimes I feel like things get thrown into chaos once in a while, just to show us that you can find happiness within that space. But for me, yeah, I'm just very glad to not be. I've been eating like rubbish the last couple of days because I've not been able to be home, cooking my own stuff. So yeah, so I'm gonna be, I'll be glad to get all of that stuff back on track. So yeah. So anyway, I've been on since 6:30 as usual. So this is probably a time I should probably end it. But so if you missed anything, yeah, definitely backtrack. Obviously, the recording will be here. And I will be on again tomorrow morning. Yeah, I will be on every morning, as like I said, I think as I said when I initially did these, it will pretty much be every morning unless there's a catastrophe or something comes up. And so, and last Saturday, of course, I had the Rouhani class, so I didn't do it last Saturday. But yeah, but I hope to be on every day this week without any more interruptions or difficulties. We do have another thunderstorm coming in Sunday night, and let's just hope that that's a minor one, or that it misses our area, like in terms of its intensity, because I don't know. Apparently, the power company is not equipped to keep up. So I would prefer not to be in that situation again anytime soon. Okay. Have a great day. Thanks. Okay, you too. Enjoy your day. I'll see some. Like I said, I'll be at the Dream class at 2. And yeah, other than that, all the rest of you, everybody have a great weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow.